Don't people just wonder, like, what the hell are we doing on this rock floating around space? It's just so bizarre that, of course, there has to be so much more. Like, I don't know, it's fascinating. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Laurenlive. I've got Agata. Did I say that right? I'm so sorry. We were just saying, yay. Dela Cruz with us. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. This is such a pleasure.
Yes, I'm super excited to be connected. We've been chatting a few minutes ago just about, we have a whole bunch of different things in common, and I feel like it was definitely meant to be connection. So I'm really stoked to have you on, and we've got a really cool conversation for everybody. She is the founder of Human, and it is all about expanding parent and child consciousness, fostering our children's mission here on Earth. And I was really lucky enough because she sent me one of her classes, and I did the astrology birth chart, tropical, right, or Western astrology. It's called a couple different things for my daughter, where you look up the birth date, the time, and the place, and then you find out a whole bunch of really cool information. It's very accurate, and it helps us parents learn a little bit more about how our child is functioning and how they're thinking and feeling and their emotions and all the things, and we'll get into that. But her classes and events are really neat, and we'll, feature where to find her at the end of the show, of course, and then in the description of the notes. But tell us about you. Tell us about how you found Human. This is the coolest platform. We've got so many cool little indigo children coming in, and just really intuitive children coming in. And what a great tool for us parents to help foster this in our children. So I'd love for you to just tell us how you kind of got into the spiritual world, and then also how you founded Human.
Yeah, of course. No, thank you so much for having me. I'm mutually as excited to have this conversation. It's very expansive for me to connect with other parents that are sort of seeing the larger picture of, the purpose of their kids, and that sort of soul exchange that we're having with them. So as Lauren mentioned, my name is Agata Dela Cruz, and so I am the human behind Human. And Human is a content platform that is dedicated to supporting our children's mission on Earth. And some of the classes that we explore with is the platform is really to support guest practitioners. So I'm sort of the behind the scenes person. It is very much part of my purpose and mission to help elevate the work of others. And so the guest practitioners that come on, they teach many classes that help parents to sort of peel back the layers to better understand who is their child, what is unique about their child, both from a spiritual and an energetic perspective, and really like what is their purpose and how do you nurture that purpose. And so we explore some stuff from like astrology, understanding your child's unique energy field, how to help your child with their unique energy field, and nurturing that part of them. You know this as well. A lot of children that are coming in right now are multidimensional beings. We'll get a little bit more into detail about that, but they have these enhanced sixth senses, intuitive senses, psychic abilities. And we as parents are starting to wake up to that, is that in order for us to nurture these multidimensional beings, it is an understanding that they are here to raise the consciousness of the planet. And our role as parents is to understand them as individuals and be able to shepherd those gifts, talents, abilities, their mission, their vision that they came down here for. And that's really what Human stands for, is connecting parents to be much more like connected and conscious to their child through these different realms.
Yeah. I love it. And I do believe that. I mean, just from my own perspective of my child, I can see her just such a special spirit. And I know there's so many others coming in right now. What a wild time to come into the world. I'll
tell you in a bit why.
Yeah. And I always ask my guests, that's one of the things, what's going on? What's your perspective? What's going on with all this crazy chaos and stuff? But, and I love your perspective. So, tell us like how you founded Human though. I mean, like how are you conscious enough to even realize like there's a space for this, there's a need for this, how did you figure out this was your calling? I'd love to hear about that.
So I grew up in Eastern Europe, And my mom, ever since I was a child, I was surrounded by astrology, by tarot card readers, psychics, mediums. And this was in the 80s. And what I know now is I was surrounded by very fear-driven spirituality. And that was my first introduction to it. So it was not something new. Like I've grown up with this. I was always very aware. And in fact, one thing that I want to point out is, you know, where we were in the 80s compared to where we are now, we have grown consciously in such a big way. One sort of element of what is happening is, you know, our solar system is hurling through the galaxy and moving through space and time. We are actually moving through a place where our solar system is being exposed to much more electromagnetic activity. And so what's happening to us down on Earth is actually there's much more activity, and it's affecting us and our consciousness and our body. And so we are opening up our energy fields, and we are becoming much more sensitive and aware. And so this relates to the children that are coming down here, which we'll talk a little bit further about. But anything that is not in resonance with this particular energy that we're in, and this raising of energy is starting to fall away. And every generation that has been incarnating down here has sort of been clearing the path. They have been coming in with their unique energy and resonance for that particular time and clearing the path for the next generation. And so we as parents have been doing that for our children. And now we're starting to clear the path. And the generation before helped to do that for us. Like if you look at what was happening in the 60s, right? So many breakthroughs, sexual liberation, like psychedelic liberation, like there was just so much. And so that generation cleared the path for us. And like now we're doing it for the next. And so this is how we're sort of raising. And a lot of it has to do with like the cosmos, and everything's interconnected, and it's super exciting. Sometimes it's a little scary to see what's going on. But when you're starting to see the bigger picture, your sort of confidence and understanding when you know what purpose you're here to play, it starts to make sense. Yeah. And so, going back to creating human, when I didn't realize sort of the reason, well, actually, let me get back. When I got pregnant, I was not ready for that pregnancy. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I didn't have a very smooth childhood. A lot of us didn't. And so I was sort of scared when I knew that there's a new child coming in, and the responsibility and how we change. And like, there's just so much that changes in your life. And it's like subconsciously, my subconscious knew something big was coming in, and it was resisting it. It's like, it knew that there was going to be a big change, how my old life was like no longer going to be. And I was like hanging on to it with dear life. And so that was sort of I would say the first point of like contact that these children are creating for us. For some of us that are not, able to get pregnant, you're going through that really hard hurdle of desiring a child. But little do you know that child in the spirit realm is already teaching the lessons that you need to be learning, which is around clearing and surrender. And so this was sort of the inflection point for me in learning, is that the children who are coming in right now, they are the catalysts for raising our consciousness. And they're doing it in such a powerful way. They're doing it even pre-embryo through the spirit world, or they're doing it through conception. I went through a lot of health challenges when I was pregnant, which got me to realize that I need to be in charge of my own health, and not quote unquote specialists. And so that was an opening. That was like the first opening for me. And the second one was that once my son was born, I really was struggling emotionally a lot. I had postpartum depression, like a lot of us do, right? Our hormones are completely out of whack because of our diet, lack of sleep, everything. And it made me really, really aware that there's a lot of parts of myself that I wasn't accepting and I didn't like about me. And I didn't want him to inherit those parts of me. And that was the sort of inflection point for me, the second one, to realize that, there's a lot of childhood trauma that I was carrying that I had absolutely no idea. That the reason I was who I was and the patterns and the behaviors that I had was because of the experiences that I had in the past. And so when I look at, my son chose me on purpose. And that's what my consciousness was resisting, is like, I knew that there was just going to be this giant shift that was happening. And now, doing a lot of the work with human and having the opportunity to speak to so many parents around the world. And I'm talking about around the globe. Well, you and I are in the States, but I'm talking about in places like India, Australia, New Zealand, other parts of Asia, Europe, South Africa. The experience that I had with my child is happening globally. And that is the catalyst that these children are coming in. And in fact, one of the things that I wanted to go back is I actually had a dream before I knew that I was pregnant, and through my dream, my son came in, and I had a dream about a dark-haired boy. And now I know that was my son coming in through the spirit world, coming in and saying like, hey, it's time. Because 2 weeks later, I had no idea I was pregnant. I found out that I was pregnant. And so the solace that I would share with anybody who's looking to get pregnant is you're going through this lesson on purpose. And so don't beat yourself up. I know it's like a really, really difficult journey to sometimes go through. But later on, you're going to understand why you went through it, because there's lessons to be learned. There's a book called Spirit Babies for anybody who is interested in.
Yeah, I read that. That was
somebody who is wanting to get in touch with the spirit world and start speaking to their child. And so, that was part of my transition, as understanding that there is generational trauma that I was carrying, and a lot of us do. And in fact, if you were born between 1984 and 1995, what year were you born, Lauren?
84.
84. Okay. What month?
September.
Oh, that's right. September. Yeah. So you're Pluto and Scorpio. I'm Pluto and Scorpio. And this is based on the Western/tropical chart. And so our particular generation, because it's from 1984 to 1995, during our childhood, we grew up with certain experiences that deeply suppressed our emotions. Our generation particularly had the experiences of maybe our father not being present, or not having a strong relationship with our father. And so that created certain experiences for us that molded us into who we are. And so there was a lot of that was being suppressed, and there was a big void that we never really truly dealt with. And so when these children came in, the children that are being born now, which are Pluto and Capricorn, being from 2008 into 2024, those children specifically have a karmic exchange with the Pluto in Scorpio parents, right? Because the Pluto and Scorpio parents are millennials. What has our generation been labeled? Selfish, narcissistic, all kinds of different labels. But narcissism is caused by childhood trauma that has not been dealt with. And so these children are coming in and they have cracked us emotionally open. And that is the role that they're here to play. With other generations as well, I know some parents are Pluto and Libra, which is the generation behind, but there is a particularly potent karmic exchange that's happening with millennial parents and the children that are being born now. And I just absolutely, when I found this out, it validated so many parts of let's quote learning and suffering, right? And these are the parts that I'm fascinated, because a lot of us are going through an emotionally difficult time, especially during this time, and we're trying to make sense of it. So when 2020 hit, I was aware about many different parts. But the main part that I was really aware, which was the inception of human, was that what is happening on the outside with all these restrictions and all this governmental stuff is there is a grab for consciousness. Yeah. That we as humans, as a collective, globally, as a humanity, are raising in consciousness. And then there are certain energetic beings that are on the planet right now that would like to keep us at a certain energetic level because it benefits them. Mm-hmm. But a lot of us are breaking through. And so there is this grab for control. And so when I learned this, and obviously I have a young baby, I'm like, oh, hell no. And that's really the purpose of human, is to open us up and understand that we are powerful beings. We are co-creators. We're manifestors. Our children are incredibly powerful. And we're here to nurture and shepherd their gifts. Because if we don't, somebody else will try to take over. And so that is sort of the warrior mom in me that has come out and created a human. And, you know, I don't look at the negative stuff just like you. I'm very much aware of it, but I'm like, what kind of energy are we putting out? And I'm very much about co-creating something really positive, beautiful, expansive. And sort of that's what I realize my purpose is here, is to help and elevate the work of others that are bringing in new concepts and ideas of how to shepherd and foster this sort of new and next generation of children.
Wow. That was a lot, and it was perfectly said, and I love it all. Yes. So much. Gosh, how do I reply? Thank you for sharing your story, for one. And it makes so much sense. And I agree with you. All this stuff that's going on, old paradigms are breaking, and it has to happen, and it has to be exposed, and it's uncomfortable, but it's also, like you said, what an opportunity. And once you start to understand it, it starts making sense. You can almost predict things that are coming, right? We all just see each sector, you know, digital currency stuff with crypto and the World Bank starting to get shifting right now. Education's really shifting. You know, a lot of kids are being pulled out of public school. I just had an episode that'll be going live in a couple of weeks on that. Every sector, healthcare, natural medicine, big pharma, COVID stuff, it's all happening before our eyes, and it's fascinating. So you're right, it's a grab for consciousness right now. And I think so many cool things were birthed in 2020, 2021, my podcast very early on.
Yes.
Look at all these cool things that we're building when we were all at home. It's actually such a gift. So thank you for all the work that you're doing with Human, and thank you for just this conversation. What a cool thing for us to just pay attention to as parents and these children coming in. And the astrology aspect is fascinating, and there's just so many accuracies. I think a lot of people don't go down the rabbit hole with all this woo-woo stuff, but a lot of people in our culture can resonate with astrology. I think that's something that's been in our culture. It's in magazines, you know what I mean? And there are just so many accuracies. So I think that's a really cool thing for anyone to look into, not only your own, but your child's. And then how can I relate better with them? How can I foster their mission? And let's talk a little bit about that, because that's a large part of the class. I watched the videos, and remind us of your partner's name that helps you with the astrology portion.
So I only launched in January.
Okay.
So we're like fresh steps into it. So my first collaborator and practitioner, that is a guest practitioner, her name is Amber.
Yes, Amber.
And Amber is a soul blueprint guide. So the branch of astrology that she focuses on is very much about like the evolution of us and about soul growth. And so she brings in a lot of that energy into the classes and helping parents understand these different parts. Now, an astrology chart in anybody's chart is incredibly complex. There are so many moving parts in it. And so through the classes, we're taking it slice by slice, because otherwise, if you were drinking through the fire hose, you would get completely overwhelmed. And especially to anybody who's sort of new to this as well. I'm somebody that can take immense amount of information and I feel comfortable with it. For some people, they just need little bits and pieces to be able to digest and reflect. Right. So that's how we're breaking up the classes. She is doing a series of classes. She did Moon and Mercury of your child, and that's the one that you tuned into. So understanding your child's moon is really important, especially if you're a mother, because the energy of your child's moon is reflective of the energy of the mother. And that is the first planet that rules a baby. And even like in embryo, because that child takes in your energy in the womb. And then when they are birthed, where the moon is, it will help you to understand your child's safety and security and emotional needs. And so when a baby's first born, right, they can't speak yet. a lot of it is through like the multisensory world. And so that class really helps you to understand like what makes your child feel safe and secure on the emotional side. The Mercury helps you to understand how does your child process information, which is super useful if you are homeschooling your children or child. It helped me. I homeschool my son. It helped me. Oh my gosh, it drastically helped me understand why me and him were like butting heads, because I'm a Capricorn and his moon is in Sagittarius, which is all about freedom. I'm all about like control, structure. What's the plan? He's very much about like self-led. And that just, it's just removed so many barriers in being able to, have a beautiful relationship with that. Then we have another class about Venus and Mars. So Venus is where our love and self-worth is born. And so it will help you to understand, what is your child's love language, which helps to develop their self-worth, because everybody has a different flavor. And then the Mars is really like, what is their point of initiation? So a lot of the children, this is a really important one, the Mars, because a lot of children have come down here with specific like missions, and they have a specific energy that they're bringing in, like ideas. So their Mars will help you to understand is like, how do they take their ideas from idea to action? Because sometimes like the Mars can be a little bit like inflicted, and where how that shows up is like a lot of like anger, a lot of like bursting energy, or the opposite where they're much more inverted. And so you as a parent have the opportunity of like, wow, my child has a lot of fire energy. How do I help consciously, connect with them on that? Or if your child is a little bit more inverted, like how do I help them to be able to step out of their shell and be able to speak, share ideas, and that kind of stuff. And then the next class that we have coming up in May is going to be Saturn. So this is the karmic connection with your child and the lessons that they're here to learn. And so part of that class, you're going to learn what karmic lessons you're here to learn and what karmic lessons they're here to learn, and how you're part of that whole entire entanglement. And then in June, we're going to talk about your child's purpose. And so we see that in the chart, and what is your purpose and what's your child's purpose? And that's going to be all these classes are really, really illuminating. Yeah. We start with the moon. So we're starting slow, and then we're building it up to some of the bigger picture stuff. And that Pluto stuff that I was talking about, that is called generational astrology. So we actually have like a free video for anybody who's interested. Just get on my Instagram and send me a DM. You can say, hey, I'm interested in the Pluto stuff, and I'll send you a link to the video. It's so illuminating, understanding the generational dynamics between the children of now and this sort of, millennial generation. It's really, really fascinating. Really, I have this tagline on Human, which is called, the earth is your classroom and the universe is your playground. And it really is. Our soul has been in different parts of the universe, and we're really down here to learn specific lessons. And we have this karmic exchange with our children and vice versa. And so I have this deep fascination of, you're doing things now in this lifetime, and you might come back again, that you need to relearn certain lessons. So wouldn't it be interesting if we kind of know what our lessons are, so we're not constantly like butting up and struggling? And so that's what some of the Saturn class is going to help us understand is like, what are the lessons that we're here to learn? And here's the fun part. When we finally transmute those lessons, we start exiting the matrix. And that's going to be a part of the class as well, is like, we've been in a lot of these karmic loops for a very long time. Everybody's been talking about the Great Awakening. But this class will really help and illuminate, like, how do we finally exit out? And so I'm really, really excited to talk about that. And Amber, who's the guest astrology, is going to be leading that class.
Very cool. Wow. It's so amazing. And it also feels, just from the outside, you're like, oh, it feels so like, and that's what's so great about your classes. You break it down. It does feel kind of like a lot, right? And just to grasp, I mean, you've been studying this for a long time, and I know a little bit about it. So some of, what you're talking about makes sense to me, but when you really like start thinking about it, you're just like, oh my gosh, each planet, there's so many different aspects, and, all the different houses. And I mean, I'm learning about, Indra was on my show. If anyone hasn't seen that episode, that's a great one. If you're interested in this stuff, he does Vedic astrology, and he did my chart. We had a reading after. Very cool. Gosh. It was like 90 minutes. It felt like years of therapy in 90 minutes. I'm sorry. It was like So great. All the things to look at, some of your strengths, oh my gosh, incredible. And then, I got a little slice of that when I did your class for my daughter, and gosh, she's only 17 months. She's got so much time to bloom, and I'm still finding out so much about her, but some of the things were very accurate, how she sees like bursts of energy, and that's so her. She'll just have her emotion and then she moves on, and so that's interesting.
Where is your daughter's moon?
I can't remember. I'll have to look. I can't remember now, but I remember she had something with Aries again. This is stuff where you have to go back and like look at it again, including my own chart. But there were just certain aspects where like she has Aries in a certain house and she's going to like start projects and then she'll kind of let someone else take on. And that'll be helpful to know right when she starts going into like school age. And, but I think this is interesting to me. Indra, the guy that was on my podcast, each person who's into astrology views it a little differently. He was talking a lot about Pluto, how he doesn't like to deal with the outer planets because it's more of a generational. And I think there's an importance to that, right? But I don't know how to really ask my question. I guess Pluto's further away from Earth, right? But then like you said, the moon is like the first planet for like our babies when they're in the womb and they're coming out. Is that because it's the closest? Does that have anything to do with the energy?
Yes. So Pluto is the furthest away. Yep. It has the biggest cycle to move. So I don't know exactly, but it's in certain signs, Pluto will be in the chart for like 14 years. Sometimes it's up to 30 years. And the moon moves like by the hour.
Right.
So it's the fastest moving because it's within orb of Earth. The generational planets that are really fascinated. I'm really, really interested in understanding about like humanity, humans, and what makes us tick. And so there's Pluto. So Pluto is what is your soul here to transmute on like a really, really big level. And so the understanding that dynamic between the two generations is fascinating. It's so illuminating. And just like you, when I like understood that information, so much like internal soul growth, like therapy is like, oh, okay. So when that happened in my childhood, now I understand the role that was playing, and then, so the next one is, Neptune. I always get confused whether Uranus or Neptune is the next one, but basically those are sort of the three outer planets. Okay. And a lot of our children have Neptune in Pisces. Neptune is in Pisces at the moment. At some point, I'm going to do a video with Amber about that as well. But Neptune in Pisces, I find really, really fascinating in collaboration with the Pluto in Capricorn, because Neptune in Pisces really is, these children are asking us to transcend of what it means to be human. That a lot of this stuff that has been holding us back karmically, they want us to relate to each other on a soul level, not like, you're white and I'm black and all this other stuff. It is beyond that. It is like, we are soul level human beings. And so as they grow up to be older, right now, they're just, they're little kids. That's going to be really fascinating. And personally, I'm really interested in shepherding that parts of them. So when you were mentioning, a lot of the kids that are coming in right now, they're very like intuitive and they're incredibly sensitive. Even if you have an Aries child, these kids with the Neptune and Pisces, have a lot of spiritual and multidimensional capabilities that we haven't even tapped into or understood. They're incredibly intuitive. They're very tuned into your feelings. They could feel other people's energies and feelings. And so it's really important to understand that about your child, because my son is a Scorpio, a sun Scorpio. He has a lot of stuff in Sagittarius, which makes him much more like, bubbly and fun and freedom. But that Neptune makes him really, really sensitive. He tells me all the time, like, Mommy, you hurt my feelings. Aww. Or he tells other kids, you hurt my feelings. And like, these kids are talking about their emotions and they're only in 3 and 4 years old. It's incredible. Yeah. In fact, I was on a trip to Costa Rica and my friend's child, who's also another 4-year-old, was with us. The boys were arguing in the back of the car, and I'm learning not to interfere too much and just allow the dynamics and watch the patterns at first. And so they were having an argument in the back of the car. And then my son, like hitting and stuff. And my son told him, he's like, you hurt my feelings. Like, he started crying. He's like, you hurt my feelings. His little buddy paused. There was like maybe like a couple of minutes pause. And then he goes, well, you made me angry. And then they're basically, they started like chatting and then they moved on. And I was like, wow, that's such a profound
that's very advanced
exchange that I don't think I even see in adults, but that's what these children are coming down with. When you have a parent that understands these energies, that's when we are able to shepherd them, right? Part of the larger learning. So here's the rub of all this chaos that's going on. And I would love for people to understand our process of learning at this point in time with all the chaos that's going on is this understanding that the power is not outside of us. The power is within.
Yeah.
So if you had certain things that have been yanked from under your feet, like security, money, career, a lot of people have been going through a very chaotic time. Those are experiences that want to teach you how powerful you are. And so that's why certain things are being removed. People have experienced a lot of death. Yeah. There's a lot of grief. It's basically spiritual cleansing. And if we are open to the lessons, when we come out of that energy, we're going to look back and understand, oh, okay, that's what that purpose of that was. Right now, when we're going through the thick of it, is really, really difficult, right? I know me as a mom, I'm going through a lot of lessons of understanding like the power that I have, where I am being taught the lesson of needing to do everything because I'm capable of doing everything. And what I mean everything is this, like I'm homeschooling, growing my own food. I've become a beekeeper. Wow. I'm running Human. I have a part-time freelance job that pays the bills on the side. And it's a lot.
Yeah.
And what that experience is teaching me is I need community, I need support. And so I have to lean on certain dynamics in my family that I'm not aligned with, but I have to learn acceptance and learning conscious communication with these people because I need them.
Yeah.
And so that is what's happening for a lot of us. And that's why it's like emotionally at the end of the day, you're just like, when does the hamster wheel stop? But, the transition in understanding your own power is what this time really wants to chisel us into.
Gosh, yeah, I feel that too. I think most mothers feel that way. I mean,
yes.
Fathers too. I'm not discounting. I'm speaking from my perspective. Talked to a lot of friends. There's a lot to do as a mother. You feel like you're always doing everything all the time, especially I think we're very similar. I'm pretty type A, like Virgo. Like I have to have the kitchen clean in order to like do the next thing. Like everything has to get done. And I've been, I've done lots of readings with mediums and just you need self-balance. You need to go ground. You need to drop things and take time for yourself or you're going to burn out. And I've been trying so hard some nights, just leave the dishes in the sink tonight. You need to sit down. You know what I mean? But, I think what a valuable lesson, and not to just get I stop myself sometimes because I'm just go, meal, you got to clean her up, you got to do this, Yeah. And I just stop myself to just look at her and just enjoy her and just be in the moment. It's all about finding the balance, and it's challenging. There are so many lessons to be learned, gosh. And then I also really resonate just what you were saying before, and you kind of said it again, just the power is within us, and it feels like it's not. It feels like it's outside of us, right? The government or society can shut things down, and we feel that we have no power, but gosh, we totally have power. You can start growing your own food. You can start a business at home. There's a lot we can do. It's not that easy, but when you realize the power is within us, and when we band together as a community, there's no stopping us. And like you said, hell no, you cannot stop a mother like we with our children and trying to tell us what to know. Like, this is a new time, a new paradigm, and there's just so much. I say it over and over. There's just so much opportunity right now. It's a really cool time, and I like to keep focusing on that, the positive. It's not all negative. I think it's actually really good, and it's forcing us, right? It's literally forcing us to change, and there are so many lessons, and it's really hard too, and that's okay. Part of being human, it's hard. It's emotional, but there's so much growth and beauty in that emotion. And I love what you said too. I just think things are so like, it's black or white or this or that and this problem, this. You notice in the news, you just keep everything's one person against another group. And no, like we're missing the point. It's so much bigger than that. This is a soul level connection. We are all equal, loving beings, and we need to help and support one another. No one is higher than anybody. There's so much going on right now. It's insane, but it's crazy cool to connect with people like you on this podcast. Like, I just feel so blessed, continue, having allies or just people to make me think in a different way. Yeah, it's wild out there, but I love it all. I think you said it really nicely. And as far as the planets go, that is still just so fascinating. I think a lot of people, again, that's so woo, but when you really dive in, they play such a role. The energies.
Yeah.
Try it yourself. Do a Vedic thing online. Find somebody. Put your date. If you got to know your time of birth, it's hard to deny it when you look into it. There's so much going on with each planet and the placement when you were born, and it makes it feel like, wow, this was not an accident. You came in at this specific time for a specific reason. You have a role, and now what you're focusing on is like, let's focus on our children. What's going on with that? And what a cool way, because a lot of our, this isn't bad. My parents didn't have that. They didn't know to look into my stuff and help me. They were great parents, but what an opportunity we have now. We have all these tools. We can actually dive so much deeper. What is my child's purpose?
Yeah.
That's cool.
I will also say this, because Pluto's in Capricorn right now. And so that's the energy that is the children are being born with. But what will be interesting in 2024, Pluto starts moving into Aquarius. I'm really excited to see what those children bring in. That's going to be a completely different new paradigm as well, because Pluto rules structures of society and sort of our containers of, how we go about our business. And the role of Aquarius is going to be really to help us understand, really to teach us the lesson of like who you are as an individual and how does that fit in with greater society or the group or the community. Mm-hmm. And sort of we're starting to learn that now that, as I mentioned before, when we grew up, it was very much laid out of, you could go to college and study this, or this, right? It was very linear. Mm-hmm. And now we're in a space and time. It's like, you can become anything you want.
You don't have to go to college. You don't
have to go to college. You can learn hands-on experience through internships. You just
networking.
There are 10-year-old entrepreneurs that are like selling t-shirts and making $10,000 a month. Wow. That is their path. They're experimenting with different tools, but like, this is how it's, it's changing. And so the landscape for our children is completely going to change. And one of like my biggest tips for parents is like, try to understand who is your child on the bigger picture. And then like on the like everyday level, even like if astrology is not your thing, your child tells you every single day what they're into and what they're not, what they're responding to and what they're not. And so, part of it is for us to start to like tune into that. Mm-hmm. And rather than push our own ideas and motives on them, because that's what's changing, is to be in that sort of respectful relationship and understanding that they're an individual. Yeah. And so like our job is to foster who that individual is and help them and support them. Even though homeschooling for me has been challenging, I joke around like I didn't choose homeschooling and homeschooling chose me.
Like everything else, right? The child chose you. Yeah.
But it's been such a learning journey for me to understand who my son is. Mm-hmm. That if my son was in some sort of program or somebody else was in charge of his learning, I wouldn't learn about all these different parts of him. He is very much interested in science and tinkering, and he's constantly creating new energy and vehicles and different concoctions of how to get from point A to point B. And so that has helped me to understand that, like, okay, so he's interested in these areas and I can bring new experiences and expose him to new stuff. And in fact, the whole reason I even know about like quantum physics and science is because of him. Because I'm like, our traditional propulsion, which is fossil fuels, that is a dinosaur technology. A lot of the new stuff is being suppressed, but astrologically, it is going to start opening up at some point. So like, get ready.
Oh yeah.
You know, you already can just fish around on YouTube, and there's people talking about moving through space time and how to bend space time. Right. You know, like the stuff that you saw on Star Trek and Star Wars,
and you know,
that is not a make believe thing.
No.
Like that stuff exists already. And where's that coming from? Somebody knows about it.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people know about Nikola Tesla.
Elon Musk is not, Elon is not the first dude to like create this stuff. I'm not saying he's not like got his, stuff together. He's interesting, but like he's not the first one. And everyone thinks it's like the first time it's coming around.
Oh no.
Look up Nikola Tesla.
Really fantastic book that blew my mind. It's called The Ancient Technologies, or no, Technologies of Ancient Egypt or something. And it goes into so much engineering detail by this guy who went down and like did stuff down in Egypt. Long story short is the pyramids were not tombs. They were electromagnetic energy machines. They were basically power stations.
Yeah.
And that was using, if you study astronomy, which we do a branch of that with my son as well, like you start learning about Earth's electromagnetic current. That's what Nikola Tesla was like starting to bring back into the 1800s. But that stuff existed in like ancient civilizations. And another really interesting book that I read that started to thread everything together for me, which is the book about the yugas. And so when you study astronomy, you understand that our solar system is moving like in a spiral through the galaxy. And that's what exposes it to like different energies and electromagnetic. But we also move in cycles as well. Yeah. And so we move through a certain part of the galaxy that basically shrouds us in a lot of the electromagnetic currents coming in. And it actually dims the consciousness of the planet or our planet. And so we go through these cycles. Yep. So astrology actually has a really, really large clock that is also depicted through the yugas. If you look at back in like Greek and ancient civilizations of Greek and Olympus and all that other stuff, that was the age of Aries. What do we have? We had war, competition, like really, really intense masculine energies, like the male body, like just muscles, right? That's Aries. Then we moved into the age of Pisces, which was the world religions came up. That's where we learn about like devotion and faith and spirituality in believing that the power is outside ourselves. And so part of the expansive journey was to reconnect with that. Now, so we're sort of journeying on into the age of Aquarius, where we're learning about like our power, our individuation, and like what we're here to do as an individual, as part of the collective. And so it's really, really exciting to be here as part of that shift. And so when you start diving deep and learning from other people, you start connecting the dots. And I think we're sort of starting to rewrite the history of who we are. What's our purpose here? And yeah, it's super, super exciting. And we're doing it with our kids.
I love it. Next generation. It's true. And I always try to like be careful and always say this on the show. Like, I'm never here. I don't bring my guests on to, change anyone's minds. Do your own research. This is all about, again, use these terms, the Great Awakening, being, more conscious. But really, when you start doing your own research, and this isn't in the textbooks in your schools, this isn't going to the library, doing your own research, finding your own data. I don't just like hear something one time and I'm like, yep, there's aliens and, like we come from them or whatever. Like, do your own research, find patterns. Look, history. Like, I'm not denying history. There's so much astrology was used in, in the solar, you go into like all these old structures, Stonehenge, they were built around things with the sun and planets. This is not a new concept by any means. So, do what you feel comfortable. I obviously am a human. I need validation too. But at the
You're
same,
a Virgo too.
Yeah. Like, I want to know that I'm not crazy.
About you is, the Virgo archetype needs to have physical proof to be like, oh, that's real.
I mean, there's a lot that I'm into that's woo and I believe it, but I do love to have like my, mediums come and validate. And I'm like, yep, I thought that. And then I saw that and you're saying that, okay, I'm gathering my data. Right. But yeah, like you're saying, go do the research yourself, do the deep digging, read the old texts. There's stuff in the Bible that I think is true. And there's a lot of stuff that I don't think is right on, but there's similarities. Look at the Egyptians.
Well, I want to tell you about Jesus because I heard you talking about like your fascination with Jesus. So
that's been coming through a lot. I've had a lot of people saying they're channeling him right now, which is interesting.
So going back to the yugas, so imagine like, a big clock, and at the top, which would be 12 o'clock, would be when we're in our highest expression of consciousness. We are very in tune with our multidimensional capabilities. So like you and I can psychically read each other's mind, etc. There's a book called The Yugas that goes into that for anybody who's interested. And at the bottom of the clock, which would be 6 p.m., is the dark ages, the lowest point of consciousness, right? That was like where the age of Pisces was happening. There's all these different spiritual masters that came in during the age of Pisces, coming in from the age of Aries. There was just like so much craziness happening during that time because we were separating from consciousness, and now we're coming back up. And so we're on the other swing of the pendulum, but Jesus was a higher consciousness being from different realms. That Buddha was another one, Lao Tzu. There's a bunch of them. There's a whole entire age during that time because those people were the the teachers and the masters. And that was appropriate for that point in time, because that point in time in the age of Pisces, we were looking to things outside of ourselves for the guidance. Yep. And so Jesus incarnated at that time to help and guide humanity. But this is the fun part, is like Jesus played a role at that point in time. But like now we're learning that like we have the same internal capabilities as Jesus did, because we're starting to come back online and in tune with the fact that we also are multidimensional beings. Like when you and I grew up in the 80s, we were incredibly intuitive. In fact, your child's creativity and that imagination that you see in children that like are from age 0 to 7, they are in direct connection with source. So they're pulling things in that you have absolutely no idea. And especially in the like homeschooling movement and more of these more progressive educational movements, there is this movement to like shepherd children from a lot of the analytical learning for that exact reason, is because when there's too much analytical and I forget, left or right brain stuff, it starts to shut down those creative parts of children. But we're here to continue keeping them open, right? Because that is their sort of like North Star in being able to express who they are and being able to intuitively lead their life, to have the capability to trust who they are and their intuition, and then being able to surrender to the universe to guide them. So yes, so that's my story about Jesus. When I heard you, I was like, I had like a profound, interesting learning about Jesus too, and like a newfound respect.
Yeah, no, I do too. I mean, I have good friends that are Christian. I went to a Christian college. I'm familiar with the Bible. I've studied all the things, but the more and more I've grown, I just really think, yes, he's a clairvoyant of his time. There are shamans and people throughout history that have done very similar things that could heal people, and it's fascinating. But what's fascinating now, so you're saying we were in this darker period, consciousness was kind of stifled down, we've been in this control system. Now, because of what's going on energetically with the planets, you're saying now we're kind of coming out of that, right?
Well, it's the way that I read it in the Yugas first, and then when I started to really dive deeper into actual physical astronomy, so this is like NASA talks about this, all kinds of different astronomy bodies. Like our solar system is moving through a certain part of the galaxy, whereas before we were kind of shrouded in this cloud that kind of shielded us from certain electromagnetic energies. Like now we're coming out of that, and it is creating much more bigger electromagnetic currents. So
is that like what's waking some of us up though?
Yes, because like we are all energy, right? So if you get into the whole like quantum physics, quantum field stuff, down to like even further down into our cells, like it has been proven that it's energetic matter.
Right.
So everything has an energetic vibration and everything is energy. We are all one. That's where that comes from.
Yeah.
Quantum physics basically dispels that. And so when you think about if just let's talk about Earth. If Earth is being hit with all these different like electromagnetic fields, it is raising the Earth's energy, and that is affecting us as humans because we are, made out of water, we're made out of tissue. And so that is how it's starting to activate us in a completely different way. One of the things that I personally follow is, you might've heard of this, is the sun has had a lot of coronal mass ejections and like solar flares, and those are getting only stronger and stronger. And that is literally because we're moving through a certain part of the solar system that is activating the sun. And so scientifically, that is stuff that like the astronomy, like society talks about.
They don't go into the spiritual meaning of it. They just go into the science. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. I agree. But it's interesting. And I know we're coming up here in an hour and I have one more question to ask. I really want to get in, but I do just have a quick question. I know we're going down rabbit holes, which I love. Do you think though that maybe higher purpose, we go through those dark places and the energies on purpose, like for our souls to grow? Or is it just like just something that happens? Or is it something that you think like we are going through certain parts of the universe at certain times, we're here during that time? Like, do you think it's all kind of, this isn't a right or wrong, just like what's your intuitive, do you think that's happening on purpose? Because why couldn't we just all be always in the light and the good energy? It seems like maybe that's, and other planets are going through things like this too, right? So do you think it's happening, you know what I mean, for a greater purpose of growth? And
yeah, it's about duality. So we need duality in order to understand growth. So for instance, if we didn't have our children that were the catalysts to help us understand like who we are, we would be stagnant. Right. And so we wouldn't be learning, we wouldn't be growing, we wouldn't be expanding. Yep. I'm not a guru, and I collect a lot of information and rather than like reading one point and thing is like, oh, this is I read and I experience, and then I start to form my own opinions.
Your own truths and opinions. Yeah.
It's my own opinions and other people might have different ones. Sure. And that's part of the learning that we have to understand. Different people are at different points of consciousness and learning and soul growth. And so they're going to have different experiences and different things that they believe in. And it's okay. Yeah. Yours might be different. And we need to learn that not everybody has to agree with you. 100%. That's part of our learning as part of this sort of, current, what's happening in society as well is there is a lot of polarity, there is a lot of duality, but it serves a purpose to help us to relate to people that are different from us. Because for so long we have been told, you need to be in this box, and this other countries in this box, they're this skin color and they believe in this kind of religion, and these are their cultures and societal things. And that's changing now because of the internet and how much we travel. In fact, when I think about where our children are incarnating, they're incarnating all over the world and all over the earth. Like I incarnated in Eastern Europe. I went through my sort of like levels of understanding. Then I moved to America, and that changed me. And that's what's happening with the children. Like it no longer matters. Yeah. Like you might have historical ties to something, but there's this like large expansion that we don't really feel like we belong anywhere or to anybody. Right. And that's the change that I think is happening. But we need the duality to constantly grow and evolve. Because I believe that's sort of the meaning of life, Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I'm having this like realization, you already said it, but I'm having my own like, okay, I'm kind of getting it more. I've always thought this. Children, like you said, up until like 8, just on average 7 or something, there's the imagination. They're so free. They don't have the fear thing. They look at life so differently. They're very in the moment, right? And that's so beautiful when you're a parent to live through them again. Everything's exciting. You're in the moment. What a gift, right? Then stuff comes through media and, school and people, and they're starting to pick up on your parents and fears. And then it kind of starts, the imagination goes away. And I think maybe what's going to be cool about these kids coming in is that they're going to be able to like last longer, or maybe even throughout their adulthood a little bit more. And I'm not saying they're not going to be influenced. That's part of being human, is you're always going to be inundated and like trying to sort through stuff. But
I think they're going to be able to hold on to that intuition, that creativity longer. And also because there's more parents like us that are awakening and are more aware of it, hopefully we'll be putting less of our fears and our issues on them, which then they'll have that greater chance to just stay open, right? So it's just that's so cool. And I really want to be a part of this and do that with my child. It's going to be a constant practice, of course. But
yeah. The other thing that made me think of while you were talking is, so I literally was just in the middle of putting this class together with Amber, so it's fresh in my head. But so Saturn has cycles, and the cycles are broken into 7. So once again, we're talking about the clock. So age 0 to 7 is, the child is learning and sponging off what they're surrounded by and the people. From age 7 to 14 it's called a Saturn opposition. So some of you might have heard of something called the Saturn return. Happens when you're age 30, but it actually moves, that cycle moves through like children's lives as well. So age 7 is when we have our first square, and that's when we start, either going into school, learning more like responsibility, and you're no longer like a tiny kid anymore. Then, age 14, you have opposition. And that's when you're teen years, right? So you feel like nobody understands me. You're like opposed authority figures, which is a very Saturnian thing. So you're learning that lesson. Then you're moving into age 21, where you're leaving the nest. So you've been imprinted by your parents and society, and now you're like kind of trying to strike it on your own. So that is the third square within Saturn. And then like the final return is you sort of probably have gotten comfortable at around age 30. And then Saturn is basically going to come and say, are you in alignment with your purpose? If you're not, I'm going to come and clear the slate for you. And then you're going to learn some lessons to get you on your 2 feet. And so, like knowing all this stuff, if you have a teen in your life, would be very, very validating. That's it's like the reason that you're butting heads with them is on purpose. And then there are certain lessons that need to be learned there, and you could be the nurturing guide for them instead of it being sort of
them on their own trying to figure it out. And
time.
I mean, I think, gosh, my 30s. I mean, I'm still in my 30s now late 30s, but has been the most, I feel like I've grown the most. I know myself the most. It's been the most amazing decade so far, in my opinion. But before we close, what are a few tips besides, of course, your classes, just that you can give to the parents? Like, what are just some easy things, just daily basis things that people that have children that want to be more conscious, like what can they do?
Well, I think a lot of parents are already, learning more about conscious parenting. It's called connected parenting. It has all kinds of there's all kinds of different books, and it has all kinds of different labels. But at the end of the day, it's about like creating a connection with your child. So that is one. I'm not a specialist in that field. There's so many people that do a beautiful job, is like, go seek them out. So, if you're not already practicing connection parenting, that's going to go a long way. You don't have to be into astrology and all this other stuff.
Okay.
The second one I would say is, well, it's not an easy tip, but, understand that there are certain things that are happening in your life because you have generational and childhood trauma that is the underwriting current. And so our purpose is really to start clearing some of that, because what happens when we don't clear our childhood trauma, we pass it down to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. So we're perpetuating this suffering.
Yep.
And so that's one. Another one is pay attention to what your child is telling you and what they're interested in. So, like I mentioned, my son is really, really into science. So if they're coming and asking you to play, let them lead.
Yeah.
And see what they're showing you. What are they interested in? I like to expose my son to all kinds of different experiences. He's 4.5 now, but when he was young, it was sort of everything. We traveled a lot. I took him to stuff that I am really like into art and design. He is not, and that was just like,
yeah.
It would be so much easier. We could do art classes, but he's not into that. And so he's sort of taking me on a journey of like, Mom, let's learn about science. And we're doing astronomy and all this other stuff, which is helping me to expand as a parent. So learning to let go of not being like, oh, I'm into football, and so I want my son to be into football.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, take him to games, but he might not be into football.
Like, don't force something on them that you like.
Yeah, and I would say the same thing with teenagers. Every generation has its own like unique signature. The teens that are walking on the planet right now, they are the most beautifully empathetic, sensitive.
There are a lot.
They're so different when I was in high school, and I see it in the kids that are around. One thing that we have to change is, and this is particular to boys, is allowing to boys express all their different human emotions. In America, we like to basically perpetuate this idea like a boy can only express anger as an emotion for him to be validated as a male. Right. That if you're crying or anything else, it's seen as a form of weakness. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people are moving beyond that. It is still a little bit something that we need to start clearing. Mm-hmm. So it's little things like that are actually outside of spirituality that are very much a lot of psychologists and early childhood specialists are already talking about and have been talking about for a while. Just tune into that, and you're already going to be well on your way and helping to support these kids.
Yep. I think the number one thing I'm listening and hearing over and over, and I have other resources too, let them lead. It doesn't mean let them like run the household and there's no discipline or there's no guidance. It's just letting them lead more. Because as someone who wants to more control the situation, listen to them. Let them lead the game, or you know what I mean? Like that's a beautiful tip. So thank you. Wow. Well, we may have to do a round 2 because there's so much to talk about, but this was phenomenal. Thank you for being here and for this conversation.
Thank you for having me. I mean, I could talk about this all day.
Yeah, I can see your passion. I love it.
So thank you for the listeners who tuned in. If you made it this far in the conversation, if you were intrigued.
Yes.
And yeah, it's a really, interesting time that we're in.
It is. So where can people find Human online?
So what I'm most active at the moment is Instagram. So if you're interested in anything, my direct message box is an open door. I know that Instagram can feel intimidating, but like, you've met me now. I'm a human. I run the account. You can pop in and say hello anytime. If you were inspired by something, like literally direct message me. I love talking to moms. That is my purpose of being on Instagram. It could be kind of a
how we connected.
Place.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be kind of a toxic place. And I want to do the opposite of that, is creating much more connection. Yeah. And so the handle is at backtohuman.earth. And that's the handle of Human. I also have a website, but once you get into Instagram, there's links to everything from there. So,
and we'll link it in the description of the show notes too. So yeah, well, gosh, thank you. Everyone check out Human, check out the classes. So cool. What a cool way to just connect with your child more and understand them more on a deeper level. So thank you for your work. It was so lovely chatting with you.
Thank you so much, Lauren.
Yeah. And thanks everybody for listening. You can find me on Instagram at Reallaurenlive and my website, Lauren.live. Cheers.